Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
What's up, champs? Welcome to another episode of the Short Shifts Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Keeping Karlsson. I'm your host, Louis Ezekiel. Joining me tonight, my pal and yours, Derrick Dodson. Derrick, it is not the night before hockey, but we had to include the preseason poem here. It was on the the Cupful Discord for all of our listening pleasure last night. How are you feeling here on the first night of the hockey and fantasy hockey season?
I'm feeling very good. I'm excited to be here, Louis. I am excited for the 3 games we have on tonight. That'll be last night when people hear this probably. And also for the MLB playoffs, the ALDS I'm currently watching, featuring my Toronto Blue Jays, who I am a fair-weather bandwagon fan of at this moment.
Yeah, my Tigers are in it too, although they were kind of muling this evening against the Mariners. The Tigers were like the one ticket that I could actually afford to get, so it was like a fun place to actually go down and see. The Lions and even the Red Wings a lot of times out of my price range, but. I was a bit of a Tigers fan, although baseball, I was whining about baseball being one of the obnoxious sports because of the whole kerfuffle about the baseball play-by-play guy saying he's not going to watch ESPN's hockey opener. We had some fun with that, but we got to move on because we actually have quite a bit of news here. If you are listening to Short Shifts for the first time, and every issue is somebody's first comic book, Short Shifts is a twice-weekly check-in between the giant Sunday evening episodes of Keeping Karlsson. We just want to keep you up to date with all the latest fantasy news, takes, and analysis all through the season. We've got a slew of Short Shifts hosts to bring you outstanding episodes. Myself, Derrick, will be joining us sometimes, and of course, bringing you the Matchup Maximizer. We have joining us on Tuesdays also are Elizabeth and Ryan. The Thursday show primarily with Shams and Jeremy. Just going to be an outstanding season of content for you here in the midweek. Can't wait to get this new season underway. But let's get into it here because we have had some interesting stuff already. We got to start, I think, with the biggest story of the young evening. We're almost 2 games in. How about Frank Nazar, fantasy legend, former Michigan Wolverine, of course. Can't forget that. But yeah, he had a goal and assist this evening. A goal and an assist for his line mate Toivo Teravainen. A couple assists for Tyler Bertuzzi. So all the scoring for Chicago coming from that second line. Obviously, this goes for every bit of advice and discussion that we have here on the first episode. We don't want to rush to any conclusions. This is an exceedingly small sample size, but the prospect of depth in Chicago is pretty tantalizing. Also of note, Ryan Donato was still on line 1, but was off the power play. So maybe a little bit of concern there. That would be more of like a, Ivan Barbashev, third wheel, line 1, PP2 kind of situation, which is probably not where, people were looking at Donato after his great deal of success last season. But what do you think? Is the second line in Chicago legit? Is it interesting? Should people be looking at waiver wire?
The second line in Chicago is so legit. I've already seen people calling it the real first line. Bedard has still a lot of growing to do. He is not being good on the face-off circle tonight. He may still be getting some tougher matchups, and maybe that Nazar line benefits. Nazar's been really good in his limited NHL career so far. He's really good tonight. I actually drafted him in the 15th round of the Cupful. Again, that's the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. And I would say I'm very happy about that pick right now. I think it could pull a lot of value for me, but it is a deep pick. I don't think you're going to be dropping any of your top 100 skaters in a shallow league to pick him up, but in a moderately deep league, definitely keep an eye out for him. He's, I think, the real talent on that line right now. Things could shift around with the lines, but I feel like Nazar is the one who's most likely to hold his value through this season.
Yeah, all right, very cool. And so we'll have a number of forwards that we'll look at throughout the course of the episode, and maybe we can talk about sort of how we will rank them towards the end. Let's get on to another headline. This one, not forward related. We got some goalie action. Georgiev waived from Buffalo. Colton Ellis signed. And we're going to see an Ellis-Lyon tandem until Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen returns. As we usually like to say on this show, in most cases, a tandem goalie basically means there are not fantasy worthy goalies here. Do you see anything to look at from Ellis or Lyon?
Yeah, at the moment, I generally would look at tandem goalies on really strong teams, and I'm, no disrespect to Buffalo, but that's not how I see them at the beginning of the season. It certainly could change. They could get on a roll. So, keep an eye, but it's potentially just short term anyway until UPL gets back. So I would consider it as a spot start only option probably for Colton Ellis. Definitely someone to keep in mind in your deeper dynasty leagues if he happens to be available.
Yeah, go for your matchup. I know Shams, if he would hear, he would say, if you're trying to figure out who's got a good matchup, look at Money Puck or something and see what Vegas thinks as far as game winner. All right, and one more. We've got an injury piece here. Cole Perfetti injured. Alex Iafallo has moved up to take his power play 1 spot. Although we're hearing that they are moving towards a nice big deal with Kyle Connor. This forward depth is getting a little thin in Winnipeg. So I think we can throw Iafallo there on the pile for some of the guys that we can talk about. But anything immediate on Perfetti's injury or Iafallo's potential benefit here?
Yeah, I think it benefits Iafallo, and also Shiberkov, I believe it's Nikita Shiberkov, who's a young player who played in a handful of games and has scored in a few of them. He made the starting roster, it seems, and is currently on the second line with Nyquist and Taves. That's Jonathan Taves, returned from several years away. That's an interesting second line, but I'd like to see how they play first before I encourage anyone to rush out and get any of those players.
Yeah, I think I'm more interested in the Chicago second line right now, which is not maybe what I would have expected to say. Another kind of interesting potential good deployment option here. Brady Martin made the Predators and is playing at the center 1 spot. A lot of Predators were pretty tough hold last year, and realistically, Martin may very well just be a 9-gamer, but it is a nice spot for now. Somebody maybe to keep an eye on. We'll see how he does for his first couple games, but Derrick, he might be showing up on Matchup Maximizer potentially with a decent schedule in the coming week if you can afford to take on another pure center and you really want a lotto ticket. All right, Derrick, before we talk about a new 5-forward power play, some mid-game changes, and a little bit about drafting in the early season, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our sponsors. Football is back, and so is your shot at big wins with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL. Your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's the play. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats from breakout rookies to elite QBs and unlock the upside every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. I'm looking at the app right now. I see my Detroit Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs. Detroit is going to be taking on a wounded Kansas City. I'm trying to more or less 0.5 rush and receiving touchdowns. I am going to say more there. And then I'm going to stick in the NFC East. I see Josh Jacobs with Cincinnati visiting Green Bay. Also at 0.5 rush and receiving TDs. Cincinnati just picked up Joe Flacco in a trade to try to solve their QB problems. So I have a feeling that the Green Bay offense is going to have the ball plenty. So give me more on Josh Jacobs as well. So going more with the running backs from the NFC North. And As a kickoff bonus, new DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code THPN. That's code THPN. Play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call, ride the upside. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-7-897-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Welcome back to Short Shifts. All right, so Derrick, it seems every offseason we get a team that's going to try out the 5-forward power play. This season it's going to be the Vegas Golden Knights. We have Shea Theodore as the defenseman left out as Marner is manning the point as he did frequently during the preseason. How worried should owners be who drafted Shea Theodore?
Worried about the power play production, I would say that's a reasonable worry. Mitch Marner did take over the quarterback or blue line role on the Maple Leafs top power play for most of last season. And it seems like he's poised to do that again. Now, Shea Theodore briefly played on the flank in a practice, but was sort of replaced by Geogiev. And that could go back and forth a bit. And Shea Theodore can obviously still be valuable on PP2 and at even strength as well. So he's still going to be a valuable defenseman, but it definitely does cut into his power play opportunities. And it's not Vegas isn't the only team doing that. We've also seen earlier in the preseason, LA has been doing that, rocking a 5-forward power play without Brandt Clark or Drew Doughty on it. So keep an eye. There may be more teams that switch over to that. Definitely seems like a lot of teams are recognizing that they can run 5 forwards on the power play 1, and then on power play 2, a defenseman or even 2 defensemen there, and that kind of transitions more into the even strength time as the man advantage period ends.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I also, in my notes, I had, Theodore has been productive with split power play time and power play 2 before, but it definitely limits the ceiling. And yeah, I don't think either of the LA power play QBs really covered themselves in glory at all last season, both with ample opportunity. And Marner, I think, is as good as any forward to have on the point. He was a delight to have in an old Fantrax league I did that had takeaways minus giveaways as one of the categories, which was always pretty fun. But yeah, if we do end up seeing a bad giveaway or two, we have, at least in the past, seen pro coaches be, kind of gun shy when they see those things happen and sort of go for a more conventional look. But they put a lot of time in on this one. Like I said, Marner's the one you would want if you got to pick one. So I think they're going to give this a legitimate try. And yeah, that may limit the upside for our Theodore drafters. We had another kind of interesting change power play wise in New York right during the game this evening. So Derrick, tell us a little bit about who we should be keeping an eye on for the Rangers.
Yeah, so this is the Rangers' top power play featuring their new JT Miller. Also featuring in practice through the preseason were Vincent Trocheck, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and Adam Fox. However, after a couple periods in tonight's season opener, without getting anything going, it seems like Vincent Trocheck was switched out and Alexis Lafreniere was brought in. So big opportunity for Lafreniere if he can hang on to that. That's been the one thing that's been eluding him for the last couple of years as he's started emerging as a star of sorts in New York. If he can hang on to that PP1 time, that's great for him. Tough for Vinny Trocheck.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, the season is young, obviously. Who knows what changes we might see. This was not a very successful outing for the Rangers against the Penguins. They were shut out, which means Arturs Silov, who was a bit of a surprise starter for the Penguins today. Jarry obviously just has been with the team longer, has the bigger contract, but a great way to start is by shutting out the Rangers. So that is one to keep an eye on. I could see someone, prospectively adding Shilovs. I don't see why you wouldn't maybe ride the momentum a little bit, but I am not a coach, so don't take my word for it. Keep your eye on GameDayTweets.com and see if maybe Shilovs does pick up the next start, and then we can maybe start talking about a goalie controversy. But a really nice way to start. And Justin Brazeau with 2 goals, one into the empty net to lead the way for the Penguins in their first victory. Looking nice for Evgeny Malkin too, with a couple of assists. All right, Derek, we've gotten through most of our news here. I wanted to just talk a little bit, reflect on our draft experiences. I know you had kind of a round-by-round detail posted in the patron-only Discord group, which is always really cool. Lots of people were coming to the channel to check out what you and Shams and Jeremy and Ryan had to say. I've been working on night before hockey and getting the show ready to go here, so I'll get mine up there. It's on my to-do list, certainly. But I thought we could maybe just recap quickly one pick that you are pretty happy with and one that you are a little worried about from the draft. And then we did have a question about from Ryan Downey, a fellow Short Shifts host, but he was curious about any week 1 waiver wire moves or waiver wire strategies, this week and for the season, especially with this week kind of being a tough one for streaming purposes. So let's start with the bad, so we can end on a happier note. Derek, what is a pick that has you sweating a little bit compared to obviously your otherwise very ideal draft?
Well, I'm not going to say it's bad or that I'm sweating too much, but I will say that my 9th round pick in Kicupful, Will Cooley, turns out I grabbed him quite early relative to the rest of Kicupful. We got some preliminary ADP data. I took Cooley, like I said, round 9, 119th overall. His ADP is looking to be around 146, a range from around 116 to 186. So a lot of people got him a lot later. And the reason I'm quite happy, in addition to his 7 hits tonight already, New York has an amazing schedule for this fantasy season. They have 12 games during the 3 weeks of the Cupful Fantasy Playoffs. 10 of those 12 games are actually on light days. So you're going to get a ton of games from any New York player during your fantasy playoffs. Through the whole season, they've got 49 light days overall, and they only have 4 what I would call wasted games after the fantasy playoffs are over. So in that, last week of the regular season in April, when a lot of times teams are resting their stars, so Cupful doesn't run any fantasy playoffs during that time. Really valuable team to have at least one forward from, I would say. And he was going a lot later than other top 6 Rangers forwards. Cooley's only 23. He had a huge improvement in his minutes and production in his sophomore season last year over his rookie season. He's hitting around, on average last year, 3.5 hits a game, and that's kind of what I projected him for. Similar with his shot attempts, but if he's as has been the case through preseason, and the coach has mentioned, being given a shot in the top 6, he's going to have more ice time. And he may be in the role on the, those top 6 skilled lines of being the feisty puck retrieval guy, and even more opportunity to hit, as tonight was an indication of, like I said, 7 hits in the season opener tonight. He played full seasons in his first 2 years in the league, 81 and 82 games. He's dual eligible left wing, right wing in Yahoo. And he's not on PP1, as we discussed earlier. But the way I drafted him, the basis on which I drafted him was only for 6 power play points on the year. So basically any power play production is a bonus. He's like a 45 to 50 point guy. I have him pegged for around 170 shots, 50 blocks, 290 hits. That only works out to about 4.3 Cupful points per game. But factoring that schedule, he's a really valuable skater. I think should have been drafted again just after the top 100. That's, I think, the floor of his value. And if he sticks around in the top 6 and maybe gets a crack at PP1 at some point, maybe due to an injury, or if the Rangers power play continues to not connect, he could be even better than that.
All right. Yeah, very nice. I like the idea. I like the idea a lot. And yeah, some good early returns here. And I believe Cooley ended up taking more ice time than JT Miller. There was some talk that maybe Miller is still feeling the effects of some of the bumps that he took during the preseason. But yeah, it's got to be a very exciting start to have some nice production from the peripherals, even when the scoring is not going so well. For the team overall, obviously. All right, so mine is kind of a twofer, but it's a mixed bag here. So I want to talk about a pair of picks that I made. I took Valeri Nichushkin in the 7th round, 98th overall when his ADP in the cupful was around 88, so like 2/3 of a round late. And he has been line 2, power play 2. And I thought to myself, well, maybe if Nichushkin's not up there, I'll grab Landeskog, who obviously is making his big comeback. And I was able to get him in the 10th round, about a round late. If he gets back into something like his old ways, there would be 2 obstacles to Nichushkin having first power play, but at least one of my guys would be there. But yeah, so with Lehkonen now on power play 1, I didn't see the third option. Of course, maybe neither of them will have that top power play opportunity. Now Colorado is deep, and line 2, power play 2 guys certainly can have some value. It's a long season. Maybe there'll be some injuries. I'm not looking to rashly dump one of these guys right away. Obviously not right away, but I would need to see some real struggles. But I am a little disappointed. I'm glad that at least I grabbed them both a little later than they were going on average, but not exactly what I was hoping for. I do have some hope that Landeskog in the 10th might end up being some real super value. I didn't love a whole lot of what else I was looking at there. Nothing really excited me at that point. And so, I thought I would go for it with Landy. So we'll see how he does. And I guess I will transition from there to happier approach. I was really excited to get Josh Norris in the 13th round. I actually got him right around his cupful ADP, but I think he was being undervalued in part because of his center-only designation. Lots of great centers to choose from, so you can definitely see, not potentially having the room for one of those late centers like Norris or Zegras. I almost put my mistake being drafting Lee over Zegras, but that was so late in the draft. I think just picking up Zegras is the good move. Whoever else you grabbed at that time, it's kind of like whatever. But yeah, with Josh Norris, he obviously was on fire all preseason. He managed to go the whole time without being injured, so hopefully he can continue that. But yeah, line 1, power play 1, playing great with Tage. This could be a really, really excellent high average 38 games. And then, I'll have, he can head to the IR and I'll have a slot open where I can maybe get a person with some more diverse positional eligibility. But, the reality is if Norris can stay healthy for a season and he's out there with Tage and he's getting this great exposure, his ceiling is really high, definitely in the 70s. And so, that obviously is the big question. I have been burned plenty by saying, hey, I hope so-and-so has a healthy season. So, yeah, I drafted him. I obviously hope he's going to have a healthy season. But I'm not going to make any bold predictions like Matt Murray is going to play the whole year, like I said a few season openers ago. How about you? What was a draft pick that you were feeling really good about?
Yeah, I'll take it as this one, whereas Cooley was someone who I took ahead of ADP, someone who I got behind their ADP as Mark Stone. And Stone to me is the kind of player that you're very hesitant to draft because of their injury status. And just talking, a little bit about, factoring that in at the time of your draft, I like to factor in injury history. I think if you project all your players for 82 games or only draft on a per game points basis, you're going to end up typically on your team with a lot of players like Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Zach Werenski, Josh Norris, players who do have an injury history, and then they won't all get injured probably, but some of them may. And I find that the best way to do it is to factor it in, but not to the true extent of their injury history, if that makes sense. So, for example, when we're talking about Stone, if you look at his games played since COVID, in the 2 COVID shortened seasons, he actually played pretty full seasons. But in the 4 years since then, he's played 37, 43, 56, and 66 games played. It's not great. It's a bit of an upward trend, but it's still not great. But the way that I set up my sheet and factor that in, it ends up with a projection for him of 71 games played. That's really low on my sheet, but it's still, competitive to the point where I'd actually consider drafting him. I took him in the 11th round, 147th overall. His ADP was around 130, going as early in some divisions as 97th. He's, I think, still really, really valuable on a per game basis when he plays. So if he stays healthy, that'll be a really good pick for me. I've got him, projected around 21 goals, 45 assists. Of those points, 20 of those on the power play. Only 143 shots. He's not a huge shooter, but he does play that net front role on the power play, which can be really good for getting some rebounds and tip-ins. Only about 40 hits and 40 blocks, but just the points alone really elevate his total cacuffle value there up to around 4.7 of our cacuffle points a game. And I think, Marner joining Vegas is kind of a blessing for Stone. He doesn't have to play the top line matchups potentially anymore. He's going to play on a second or third line, depending on how you want to describe them, playing away from Eichel and Marner. But I think that's better matchups for him. And I think that also sort of cements him being a staple on that top power play. If he's got less even strength ice time or less even strength responsibilities, that can be where he can focus, hopefully.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I think the strategy overall is a good one to be, thinking about, yes, these are people who get injured, but what if they don't? And, if you can, afford to take a couple swings, and I think those later picks are really good for kind of taking a swing on a player who, maybe will defy the odds and play more games than they had. I think that's a good way to sort of figure out your value, especially when people are shying away from them. I know we both also did a strategy of waiting on our defensemen, kind of avoiding some of this defense inflation that we were seeing across these drafts, not only here but also I feel like among some of the public drafts and in other places. So an interesting counter strategy, I think usually, especially for my position, because I got that first overall pick, but in the cupful draft setup this season, that meant I picked last every other round. So I found myself on the tail end of some of those defenseman runs and, just thought, should I pick, a defenseman who's, maybe a tier below where I wanted to get at this point, or, just keep waiting and, grab whoever falls down and try to make up some bonus with the forwards, especially, like we said, some of these forwards that people were maybe shying away from. All right, and then we did just have one other question about week one waiver wire moves or waiver wire strategy for the season. Mine is pretty quick, so I'm going to take the first shot at this. All I really did to prep for the week is I added Evan Rodriguez when I had a free slot with Miller briefly being on injured reserve. But I haven't made any moves yet. I really want to focus this season on trying to be more patient with my moves, not just try to cram maximum games into the start of a week, because, plenty of weeks have ended up, with a 30-point spread. So I'm going to try to have some faith in my team, at least until I see reasons to be concerned, to remain competitive and keep it close or even pull ahead. And then at the end of the week, maybe I am forfeiting the chance to get, an extra, goalie start or, a couple games from a defenseman based on my roster composition. But I think, the benefit of going into a next week with some moves made ahead, that really can have some additive bonus because, you get ahead in your next matchup and you've got a games played advantage, and then you can start to, make some moves further along into the future. At the start of last season, I really struggled because my injuries were quite bad. I had some injured players that I picked up initially, and then I had guys like Doughty who got injured after being drafted. And so I felt like I spent a lot of time just trying to catch up and fill my roster. And that left me chasing points through a lot of the early weeks. And then when I was able to go on a bit of a winning streak, it was primarily during a period where I could save my moves till later in the week and use them if I needed to, if I was in a bind, but otherwise prep for the future. So that's what I'm really trying to do. So no official waiver wire moves because the first one was on Monday before puck drop. But, or I guess 3 a.m. But yeah, so now we play the waiting game a little bit. Let's see if I can just pull ahead on the strength of my draft and maybe use some of these picks for prepping later in the week. I'll be back to let you know how it goes next week.
Yeah, this was a very interesting week schedule-wise. The first games didn't start till today, Tuesday. We got a couple more on Wednesday, and then a full slate of games on Thursday and Saturday. Very few off-night games. If you were playing ahead of time, picking up LA because they had back-to-back games on Tuesday, Wednesday, 2 light days, that was a great move. If you're listening to this show on Wednesday, October 8th, then I would consider looking actually at Washington, who plays tonight, the 8th, and also plays a Sunday night light day game as well. So you can potentially get 2 light day games from Washington this week. Still at this point, if you're looking to still try and compete in week 1, they're the only team you can get that. You're probably not going to fit in any skaters for those busy Thursday and Saturday night games. You could look at some goalies, obviously keep an eye on game day tweets for who's going to get those goalie starts. Because, a lot of teams are really transitioning more to a tandem model. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of teams with different starters between their first game, whether or not that's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then what's on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that's going to result in some challenging decisions for the owners who drafted those goalies because, again, those tandem situations, they can be lucrative in small windows if one can pull ahead or if you can get them for the correct spot start, but very difficult to hold overall having that be a hold on your roster. Hey, Derrick, thank you so much for joining me. This was super fun. This is a great way to start the new season. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you enjoyed the show, please consider joining the Keeping Karlsson Patreon group at keepingkarlsson.com/patron, where super supporters receive ad-free episodes and you can interact with Brian, Elon, the Short Shifts crew, and hundreds of other talented fantasy managers in our active Discord server. The server has been hopping. I don't know if it's ever been more exciting. So having a lot of fun with all of the early season excitement. Well, we mentioned it a few times, but I want to say it again. Make sure you are checking out GameDayTweets.com to get all the best info from X without having to slog through the rest of the place, including team by team, searchable tweets by player name. It's just really outstanding resource. Elon and Shams work so hard to bring it to you. It is the best place for your news, all from good, reliable sources. As a history teacher, I endorse it. Please visit that site and the other great sites we use to research our episodes at Yahoo, Frozen Tools, and Natural Stat Trick. Our intro and outro music was created by Pat Roach. And until we see you next time, play smart and keep your shifts short.